All right. This is Unit 1, Lecture 2, Correlations and Experimentation. So we're going to talk about correlation versus causation. This one shouldn't be as long as the other one, but what I would highly recommend at the end of this is to take a look at the video on placebo cracking the code, which should probably be linked on here as well. So last time we talked about studies, we talked about having a scientific attitude. We talked about some humility and things like that, and some things that get in the way of science with psychology, specifically the fact that we are studying humans who are imperfect, and we are humans studying them who are also imperfect. So with that, let's take a look at correlation and experimentation. And I know a lot of you guys, again, mathematically, you're used to correlational studies. And you're used to studies about experiments. But again, we're going to talk about doing this with humans, which gives some sort of caveats that are a little bit different. Okay, so with that in mind, let's move forward here. Here we go. So when we're taking a look at correlation, correlation is basically a statistical measure of the extent to which two factors vary together. And then that tells us overall what's going on. We've got two different ways that this happens. Let me pull myself out of the way there. So we have what are called positive correlations and what are versus negative correlations. Now, a positive correlation here's one of the tricks when we get into psychology. A lot of times we want to think positive is a good thing. Positive is always adding. It's not always necessarily the case. Positive, it just means that they're both going in the same direction. I get 5 of these, I'll get 5 of those. It's a positive correlation. I take away 5 of these, I'll take away 5 of those. That's a positive correlation. As I eat more calories, my weight goes up. That's a positive correlation. As I eat fewer calories, my weight goes down. Also a positive correlation, because either both numbers are going up or both numbers are going down. Now, again, the more I eat, the more weight I gain. That could be a good thing because you're trying to put on weight, but it could be a bad thing because I'm not trying to put on weight. So let's not get positive and negative mixed up with good and bad. Just means both numbers are going up or both numbers are going down here. Positive correlation, they're either both going up or they're both going down. Now, a negative correlation means they're going in the opposite direction. As one goes up, the other goes down, or vice versa. As one goes down, the other goes up. All right, that is a negative correlation. The more I spend practicing running the mile, goes up, the lower my mile time becomes, goes down. So as one goes up, more practice, time comes down. That's a negative correlation. Now, again, that's a good thing because you want your mile time to become better, but they're just going in the opposite directions. So an example of this, knowing how much IQ test scores correlate with success tells us how they may predict success. And they're not really that great predictors of success because there's other things like, was I born into a wealthy family that gives me a heads up? Do I have the support at home? What is my emotional intelligence? So, there's a lot of other factors there. But if I were to say that the higher your IQ, the more likely you're going to make more money, which again is not really true. But if that was true, that would be a positive correlation. One does predict the other to go up or go down. Now, with that being said, a perfect positive correlation is 1.0, which meant that if I have 4 pens, then 4 caps will open up. So as this goes up by 4, as I have 4 whole pens, I also have 4 whole caps. So 4 over 4 is 1, perfect 1.0. As long as I've got 5 of those, it'll go up 5. That is a perfect positive correlation. A perfect negative correlation would be the more pages I rip out of the book, the fewer the pages are in the book. That would be a negative correlation. So the more that I do this, the fewer that this has. It's a perfect negative, this over this. If I rip out 18 pages, this has 18 pages less. That's a perfect negative correlation. Some more stuff there that you can take a look at on positive and negative correlation if you'd like to pause and sort of go through there. Now, again, no correlation means that one number doesn't at all predict the other number. You know, how much time you spend brushing your teeth versus how many questions you get right on the test. One has nothing to do with the other, so it's not a predictor. So the closer we are to a solid one, the closer we are to a negative one, means the more of a relationship we have. The closer we are to zero, less of a relationship. And we discover this by putting together what is called a scatter plot. And this is where you take your data and you put it on a graph, your independent variables, and you put them on here. And this one, you'll notice this is a perfect positive correlation, because as this goes up by 10, that goes over by 10, over by 10, up by 10, perfect straight line, perfect positive correlation. Now, for my students who take AP psychology, one of the questions that they always want to ask is, you know, what kind of a grade do I have to get in this class to do well in the AP Psych exam? And again, that's one doesn't make the other. It could be a predictor of the other, but it doesn't make the other happen. There's a lot of factors that could happen on you doing well in the AP exam. Did you have breakfast that morning? Did your boyfriend break up with you? Or did you get a new boyfriend? How many AP exams are you taking? There's all these other factors. But could your success in this class predict your success in the AP exam? This is, I want to say it's like 3 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I forget. But this was this is a correlation between how well kids did in AP psychology. Oh, I know exactly when this was. This was Hurricane Harvey. How well kids did on the AP exam versus how they did in the class. You will notice here we've got blue dots. These are kids who took it in the fall. Red dots are kids who took it in the spring. So we see a little bit of a difference, that the spring score is a little bit more of a predictor. We got more outliers over here in the fall and over here in the spring on doing well. The yellow are a couple of on-level students who decided to take the AP psychology exam. And what you can see is that there is a general trend upwards, that the better you did in the class, the more that you were in the 80 to 95 range, the more likely that was a predictor of you getting a 3, 4, or 5 on the test. Now, were there exceptions to the rule? Of course there were. You have a student here who got a 92 average in the class in the fall, but got a 1 on the test. And I happen to know that this student, their home was evacuated during hurricane. No, this is a tax flood. This was the tax flood in the spring. So when the tax flood happened in the spring, they were so busy taking their stuff out and whatever else, she wasn't able to study for the test. I specifically remember this now. So she's an outlier there. And even over here, you had kids that were outliers that maybe only got a 75 in the class, but they got a 4 on the test. But in general, you see a general trend of this being a good predictor. This was 2018. Again, another good predictor of your success in the class versus your success on the AP exam. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 2019 versus 2020. 2019, again, a pretty good predictor. 2020, not so much. If you'll recall, 2020 was the spring semester at home. So my spring students, who only really had me for the first 9 weeks until we suddenly had, okay, you're at home, I can give you 1 hour of school a week, and you're going to take an AP exam, and the AP exam is all essay and da-da-da-da. So these are kids who did generally well in the class, and their averages were really high, because if you can recall, in the spring of 2020, that was, if you got a 89.6A, it suddenly became a 99A. So averages became astronomically higher at that particular time. So suddenly you had a lot of kids that were getting A's in the class. It probably shouldn't have any average in the class, but they were doing poorly on the exam. And you didn't have as many outliers down here of kids who did poorly in the class, but still did well on the exam. You didn't have as much of that. So here in 2019, more of a predictor than 2020. Now, again, what I'm going to love to see, which I don't have the numbers for right now, but I will have them for in the fall, because right now it's June of 2021, and next month I'll get the AP exam results. And what I'm really interested in seeing is the when we got where it's a little bit more of a traditional test, but I have some students who took the class at home versus those who took the class in class, and to see if there's sort of a difference there, because Lord knows there was cheating going on for the kids who were at home, and even some of the kids in the classroom with the online tests and everything else. So that's also going to be sort of a skewed thing there. So I'm kind of interested to see those results as well. Here's a somebody with a hypothesis. Basically, the idea of who barks more, little dog, big dog. Little dog barks more. Why? Because it's the little dog's got to prove it. It's, big dog. So this was a theory where they basically had the Napoleonic theory of those who are shorter in height. Men who are shorter tend to have a shorter fuse. Their temperament scores would be less able to hold their temper and everything else. So what they do is they take 20 subjects here, 1 through 20. They measure how tall are you, and then they give them a test on temperament. They can operationally define their temperament with that score. And then they take these scores and they put them on a graphic, and you see that there is a general positive correlation that the taller you are, the better you are able to control your temper. As this goes up, that goes up. Now, again, are there outliers? Of course there are. You have this person who is 70 inches tall, who has a temperament score of 40 versus somebody here who is 68 inches tall, but has a temperament score of an 85, which is almost double. So there are, of course, exceptions to the rule. This is about, I guess this is 5'10" right here. This would be 6 foot right about there. So this is about 5'10". 70 inches, 5'10". 60 would be 60, 12. Yeah, it's 5'10". So that gives you sort of a ballpark of what we're talking about there. Now, again, with the average height, do we have as many taller people versus shorter? There's a lot of outliers there. So again, a perfect positive correlation. As that goes up by 5, this goes up by 5, this goes up by 20, that goes up by 20. Perfect positive. A perfect negative means that as this number goes down, this number will go up and vice versa. So again, when we see a positive correlation over here, number of days that you attended class versus the number correct in the final exam, there's a general positive correlation that goes up versus here, number wrong on the exam, number of days attended class. So the more days that you attended class, your number goes down. This goes up, this goes down. That's a negative correlation. Here, number correct in the final exam, the day of the month you were born on. One has nothing to do with the other. So there's no predictor versus which day you were born versus how well you're going to do on this particular test. So again, a positive correlation does not necessarily mean good news. And a negative correlation does not necessarily mean bad news. The more you eat, the more weight you gain is a positive correlation. Whether that's good or bad in your life, that's a personal thing. We're just looking at the math. The more you run, the less time it takes you to run a mile. I think I used the example before. That is a negative correlation. The more times I study, the fewer answers I'll get wrong. It's a negative correlation. But if I go, the more time I study, the more answers I get right, that's a positive correlation. So the wording and all that has a big deal to do with it. Here again, more correlations. You're welcome to pause, read through those, whatever you want. Now, more and more and more. And the reason, by the way, we're early on. The reason why I have all this stuff on here like this is because I know a lot of people aren't going to go to the textbook, and the textbook has graphics and everything else. So I've just taken a lot of graphics and put them into the PowerPoint, even though I may not address these in class. They're there for you as you go back to the PowerPoint to look at and give further explanation and whatnot. Now, what we also have to take into account what is called the third variable problem. This is an observed correlation between two variables that may be the result of a common correlation of a third variable rather than the relationship between the two being studied. So this is basically a confounding variable that gets in the way. For example, watching violence on TV correlates with, and it is a predictor of aggression. A person who watches more violent programming, a person who plays more violent video games is going to be more aggressive. There's no doubt about it. Study after study after study after study proves that that is correct. If you watch a lot of aggressive television, you are going to be a more aggressive person. Now, does that say that the aggressive television causes the aggressive person. It does not. Because again, if I'm somebody who's an aggressive person already, then I've got higher levels of testosterone, a bad childhood, whatever. I'm going to probably watch aggressive programming and play aggressive video games. So my aggression as a person might already be there, causing me to play the aggressive video games, which shows through in my aggression. But even without the video games, I'm going to be an aggressive person. So it's not, I can say one predicts the other, but I cannot say that one causes the other. The person who's an aggressive person is not going to watch the My Little Pony special or play the My Little Pony video game unless you're cutting its head off or something. Like, they're not going to do that. Most people with depression have low self-esteem. So does that mean that low self-esteem causes depression? Not necessarily. The depression could cause your low self-esteem. I can't get out of bed. I can't get myself going. That makes me feel worse about myself. So the depression could cause a low self-esteem. Or it could be that your family moved and you've got serotonin levels that are off or whatever, which are a result of both your depression as well as your self-esteem. So it's hard to say when we're doing these sorts of studies. It's easy to say that one could lead to that, but to say that one causes that is not necessarily true. Stress could lead to cancer, or being stressed can lead to other sort of habits that would be more inducive to cancer. So again, we can say that a lot of times in psychology, we can say this predicts that, but a lot of times it's very difficult to say that this causes that, okay? I'll give you some examples here. As ice cream sales increase, so do the rate of drowning deaths. You know, more people drown, the more ice cream that is sold. So can we say that ice cream causes you to drown? Of course not. When are more people eating ice cream? In the summertime. When are more people swimming? In the summertime. And if more people are swimming, it's more likely you're going to drown. Okay, so they just both happen to happen in the summer. The longer a man is married, the more likely he is to be bald. So can I say that marriage causes baldness? Of course not. The longer you're married, you're also aging. And the more that you age, the baldness and the genetics and the stress or whatever in your life, it's going to show. Okay. People who eat diet food weigh more than those who do not. So diet food causes you to weigh more. No, people who weigh more are more likely to be on a diet. Hence, they're going to eat the diet food. People who wear hats are more likely to suffer from skin cancer. People who wear the hats aren't causing skin cancer. People who have fairer skin are more likely to wear hats to protect the skin. So the hat doesn't cause it. The more antibodies a woman takes, the higher her risk for cancer. You know, a woman who's at a higher risk for cancer is going to take more antibodies and things like that. As alcohol prices go up, the number of STDs reported goes down. There could be something there. But anyways, this is where you get the whole anti-vaccination people, you know, vaccines cause autism, which is not true. You know, there's no study that shows that vaccines cause it. Here's what happens. Children do not get diagnosed with autism until they're about 6, 7, 8 years of age, when you're in that theory of a mind and you can tell at 6, 7, 8 if a kid has autism. It's really hard to tell when they're 3, 4, or 5, just because they're at the different developmental stages. Now, here's what happens. Kid goes to the school requires the vaccinations. Those vaccinations happen at 3, 4, 5, 6. And then suddenly at 7, 8, 9, they're diagnosed with autism. Well, they weren't diagnosed before the vaccine. Well, the vaccinations just happened to happen. So then a lot of people go, well, the vaccinations caused this, when they didn't. We're making a correlation. This happened. Then it's what's called an illusionary correlation. Okay. And an illusionary correlation is when you try to put things together that don't necessarily go together. You know, when somebody goes, oh, every time I get cold and wet, I catch pneumonia. Really? Every time you've ever showered? Really? Every time? You know, oh, I can tell the weather because my arthritis is acting up early. Every time it's rained, you become at crippling pain. I don't think that's true. But what we do is we take the few freak situations that happen and we assume that's happening all the time. You know, and it doesn't. You know, you hear the story, you read the story on the internet of the couple who tried to have a child. They tried everything. They tried artificial insemination, all these other things, and it never worked. They tried natural, they tried artificial, Didn't work. So finally they said, well, let's not try anymore and let's adopt a child. And so then they adopt a child. And wouldn't you know it, 6 months later, she's pregnant. And you're like, oh my God, that always happens. It almost never happens. It's just that when it does happen, someone decides to get on Facebook and share it and retweet it and all these other things. And then suddenly we're, oh, it happens all the time because we're all reading the same story. So we get this illusion that it's happening all the time. We don't read all the stories of the people who tried to get pregnant and got pregnant, or didn't try to get pregnant and got pregnant, or all the stories of the people who did artificial insemination and it worked fantastic, or of all the people who adopted and never became pregnant, which is the vast majority of them. But since those normal stories don't give you attention, hey, someone tried to get pregnant and they did, no one's going to share that. So we're only paying attention to the freak stuff happening on the news or whatever. And so we assume that this is happening all the time when it almost never happens. Most superstitions are based on illusionary correlation. OCD, I've got to flip the light on 7 times to make sure that it doesn't blow up, whatever. It's based on these illusions. That one time I didn't. No, you didn't many times. It's just that you happen to not, and then this happened to happen, and then you, oh, that always happens, and it almost never does. Okay, we perceive order in random events. When events are what they are random. For example, right here, you have 2 sets of cards. Right here, this is 10 to the ace, royal flush. Can't be beat. They're all the same suit. Those are the highest 5 cards. You cannot beat that hand. It's an amazing hand. This hand is just crap. It's a crappy hand. You've got no face cards, nothing above a 9. You've got all 5 suits represented. That's no good. You've got 5 to 6, but you're missing a 4 and you're missing a 7 and the 8 to the 9. It's just not. It's a terrible, crappy hand. You don't even have a good high card that you could bluff with. So you go, okay, what are the odds of me getting this hand versus that hand? And you go, well, the odds of getting this hand is just amazing. It's so unique. This you almost always get. This is just as rare as that. But since we take this and we combine it with all the other crappy hands, we think this is far more likely, that this hand over here is far more likely to happen, when these are just exactly, they're both of them, it's 1 in 2.6 million that I would get either one of those hands. But since we put all the crappy ones together, we get this illusion, what we'll talk about later on as an availability heuristic. When you talk about playing the Powerball, you know, you got people who play the Powerball, and the odds of winning the Powerball are 1 in 272 million. It was 1 in 175 million. They changed the Powerball up to a higher number, whatever. So what are the odds of me? Well, why do people play it? If those odds are so terrible, if they're the same odds of you being attacked by a shark while simultaneously being struck by lightning while simultaneously impregnating a mermaid, you know, that's how that, now that's in my head. But it's incredibly insignificant odds. So why would anybody play it? Because you see the story of the winners. And since you pay attention to that story, you don't pay attention to the millions of people who played the lottery and lost, we play it. You know, the coin, you know, it lands on heads 10 times, tails do. No, it's not. Time is infinite. It doesn't have to even out. Okay. And again, we'll cover more of this when we talk about availability heuristics in Unit 7. Now, one way that we can prove causation, well, how can I prove that this causes that? Is through experimentation. Experimentation is where we can take factors and make all factors exactly the same, put everybody in the same scenario, the same surroundings, the same whatnot, and just change one little thing. And when we change that one little thing, does that one little thing make the difference? Okay? Because simply gathering data is just basically going to show me behavior. But to actually get causation, I need an experiment. I need to put people in this situation and people in that situation, change one little variable and go, wow, because I, playing God, made that one change, we have a different sort of scenario. Now, what can get in the way of experiments, which we're going to talk about in details in the next lecture. One of the things that can get in the way of experiments is something called the placebo effect. The placebo effect is the idea of I'm taking medicine so my headache goes away. Now, was it the drugs in the medication that made your headache go away? Or was it the act of taking medicine that made your drug go away? I'm taking it, I'm expecting it to work. And since I'm expecting it to work, it's more likely to work. And what we have discovered over time is that a lot of antidepressant medication effectiveness gets caught up in what is called the placebo effect. It is the act of taking medicine. It is the act of, this is better for me, so I need to feel better. So again, when I take medicine and medicine makes me feel better, then I feel better. But when I come over here and I take a placebo, which is fake medicine that I think is real medicine, and that placebo, after taking the placebo and I still feel worse, that means the medicine has an effect. But when I take the placebo and I feel better too, just like the people who took the medicine, that's what's called the placebo effect, the act of taking medicine. You know, when somebody is drinking alcohol and they think that they're drinking alcohol, you know, and I'm at a party, whatever, that's going to get somebody drunk. But sometimes giving somebody what they think is alcohol, even though there's no alcohol in it, can actually cause them to be drunk, or at least act drunk. Study right here, where they took a bunch of people and they go, would you shock a patient if given alcohol? Because alcohol is going to make you more aggressive because it gets rid of your frontal lobe. And we'll talk about this all down the road. But your frontal lobe goes away. We tend to be a little bit more aggressive, which is also the weird thing about alcohol, because alcohol is a depressant, but makes us more aggressive because it depresses our frontal lobe, which is judgment and all these other things. That being said, here people expected alcohol, but they received only tonic water. These people expected alcohol and they received alcohol mixed with tonic. So they got a gin and tonic and they just got tonic water, but they thought they were getting, they thought they were getting a gin and tonic. They thought they were getting a gin and tonic, actually got the gin and tonic, only got tonic. They were asked, would you shock this stranger? They basically did it at the same rate. Both of them were just as aggressive towards this stranger. Then these people over here expected only tonic water, and these people over here expected only tonic water. They only got tonic water, but they actually got the gin mixed in. And you'll notice these with the gin mixed in, unbeknownst to them, their aggression really wasn't that much higher. As a matter of fact, their aggression was less than those who expected alcohol but received only tonic. They were more aggressive than the people who actually got the alcohol. Our minds have an incredible capacity to heal. This is why faith healers actually work. I think the Lord, power come through me, be better by Jesus. And people feel better because they believe in it. You know, when your mom kisses the boo-boo feels better. Why? Because you believe in it. You believe that mom has super saliva or whatever she told you. You know, basically all medicine prior to the 1950s was placebo effect. All right. Now, a couple of different types of placebo effects that we have here. One is what's called an open label placebo. This is when people are aware that they're taking a placebo, but in spite of that, it still has an impact as actual medicine, because we become classically conditioned to all these rituals of taking the pill and everything else. I'm taking a pill, so my depression should go away. So sometimes, even when people know they're getting a placebo, you guys are going to see a study. If you watch you go back here and go to this link, Placebo Cracking the Code, and you go to my website and you watch that, you'll see people who are getting fake knee surgery, where they put some holes into their knees. And they take a group of people and they give them actual surgery. And they take a group of people and they only put the holes in their knees, but they put them in the process of surgery and everything else to see if cleaning out the knee was effective for defeating arthritis. And what they discovered was just the act of surgery was enough to get rid of the arthritis. Now, here's where it becomes interesting, and kind of a post to that story is the people who got the fake surgery, who were told a year later, we gave you fake, they weren't told at the time. They were told a year, they thought they got real surgery. They got better. And they were told a year later, we gave you fake surgery, but their knee was still fine. Now, here's the weird part. Those people, 5 years later, they have pain in the opposite knee that didn't have surgery. And they go, I want you to do what you did to my right knee. They go, you do realize the right knee was fake. So I don't care. Whatever you did there, that worked. It's going to work here, even though they know it's fake. Okay, so when a person really believes that they're taking an effective drug, their brain is somehow tricked into making them feel better. It's because we're producing our own neurons. We're producing, I think I'm taking an antidepressant, I'm producing my own serotonin. I don't need the serotonin. And what we're discovering a lot of times, back with the placebo effect, is we're discovering that Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, Fezzer, 70% of it, it's not just the medication. Now, again, what we also have to keep in mind that a lot of the people, as they're getting the medication, they're also going through therapy. So the medication could be helping the therapy, and the therapy becomes more effective. There's a lot of other things. Now, another tricky thing with the placebo effect is what is called nocebo. And nocebo means that taking a placebo can actually give you side effects. They did this study with people and chemotherapy. They took one group of people and they gave them actual chemotherapy, which is basically putting the poison in your body to kill the cancer cells. But they took another group of people and they just put whatever in their body, but it wasn't chemotherapy. Now, the people who got the chemotherapy, their cancer levels went down, but they also had the side effects of cancer of chemotherapy, which is losing your hair, which is losing weight, which is becoming nauseous. The people who got the fake chemotherapy also started to lose their hair, become nauseous, and lost weight because they thought they were getting real chemotherapy. Their cancer went down, but their side effects went up, just like the other people. Because the idea is, well, let's give them a placebo. They won't have the side effects. But since I think I'm getting the real chemotherapy, I get the side effects. So how these studies are done, and again, we're going to talk about experiments in the next lecture. But in order to get these side effects, to get the placebo effect to be less, there's a couple of ways to try to get in front of this. One is what is called a single blind study. A single blind study means that, that when I'm giving medication to the people or whatever, I don't tell the people what I'm doing. I don't tell them that they could possibly be getting a placebo or whatever. And as a matter of fact, they don't even know what they're being tested for. Okay, so you're part of a study. You're not exactly sure what you're there for. I'm just giving you a drug, and I go, hey, let's say I'm giving you an antidepressant. You happen to have depression or whatever, but I say, here's a pill that's going to help you lose weight. Okay, so you take the pill. You may lose weight, you may not lose weight, whatever. But I'm going to measure: does it help your depression? Does it help your anxiety? That way, it's not your mind going, "Oh, I'm taking an antidepressant, I'm taking an anti-anxiety medication." No, you think you're taking a weight loss pill. So I want to see if does the real pill, does the Prozac, does the Zoloft, does that make it go down, or is it the active together? That's a single blind study. Now, a double blind study means that not only does the person who's getting the pill not know what the pill's for, but I, as the doctor who's administering the study, I don't know what the study's about either. All I'm doing is following the recipe. Because here's the problem. Sometimes if it's my hypothesis, it's my pill. Let's say I put together this pill, it's an anti-anxiety pill. And if this pill works, I can make millions of dollars and be very wealthy. So I can go, well, hey, you took the pill. Do you feel better? Do you feel more calm? No, not really. Really? Because you look more calm. Oh, yeah, you are. Because I want certain results. So what I want to do is I want to have the people that are conducting the study have nothing to do with the study, so that they're not trying to influence the patient. They're not trying to get certain results in order to sort of make the study more positive for them. So again, the best studies that you're going to see are replicated double-blind studies. Because in a double-blind study, the person who's being tested, as well as the person doing the testing, they don't know what it's about. It's going to give you the purest form of results, and also hopefully get rid of that placebo effect. Do me a favor. Take a look at the placebo video, even if it's just the first 15 minutes, taking a look at Dr. Mosley giving the research. As a matter of fact, some of you guys, if you've had knee surgery or shoulder surgery, you might have actually gone to Dr. Mosley. I think it was at MD Anderson. All right, tomorrow, or whenever you look at it, the next lecture is going to be over experiments. And we'll take a look at independent variables, dependent variables, confounding variables, and all that. That will be your next video. All right.